And this dissatisfaction isn't just showing up in polls. I mean, it's also showing up in real life. We saw protests all across the country this week, and big ones here in Washington. Like this protest you can see on the screen from the country's largest federation of unions. When workers caught wind that Musk planned to show up at the Department of Labor on Wednesday, intending to shut it down, hundreds of people, you can see them there, gathered on the building steps, ready to meet him. Guess what? He never showed up. People are also lighting up the phone lines of congressional offices, many of them fed up with Elon Musk, what he's doing. Of course they are. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski said the usual call volume coming into the Senate is about 40 calls a minute. But right now, it's 1,600 calls a minute.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been trying to drive home this lie that their Department of Government efficiency is somehow about trimming the fat or saving you money, when in fact the truth is that it's actually about intimidating government employees who would stand up to Donald Trump and his fascistic tendencies, and at the same time project out this idea that they are saving you money, when in fact what they really want to do is use your tax dollars to give Elon and his billionaire buddies the biggest tax break in history. That is what it is all about. It's not about saving you money. And that became abundantly clear tonight at the Super Bowl, when Donald Trump and Elon Musk were humiliated and had to face just how poor of a job that they are doing with their government efficiency. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into how Donald Trump and Elon Musk were humiliated, I want to hear an update on all of the terrible actions they have been taken that completely oppose this idea in a clip right here from Jen Psaki.
I kind of think that, to some degree, what we are seeing from Donald Trump right now is sort of what we expected. The strange obsessions and the constant bluster and the wild pronouncements, none of that is anything really that new. There was also the talk about taking over Greenland and Canada and the Panama Canal. There was the short-lived trade war with nothing to show for it. There was the decision just yesterday to strip security clearances from people he doesn't like. There was the third-person announcement that he's appointing himself chairman of the Kennedy Center. And I could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to. The point is, if you have been following Donald Trump for the last decade, and many of you I know have been, this is all very much what you might expect from a Trump 2.0. And I guess this continuation of the Trump show is, on some level, what a slight majority of the American people may have voted for. I don't know. But what you may not have bargained for, what they may not have bargained for, and I certainly didn't, is what I'm going to call Musk 1.0. I actually think it's safe to say people were not prepared for the way Trump has basically ceded his power. There's a reason. Time magazine's latest cover shows Musk sitting in the Oval Office behind the Resolute desk. And I'm just going to leave that up there for a second because why not? And because over the past few weeks, Elon Musk has elbowed his way into nearly every corner of the government, shuttering agencies, firing employees, gaining access to the sensitive personal data belonging to millions of Americans. In an interview that's going to air later today, Trump said he's not done yet.
I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. He's going to find the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse. And, the people elected me on that.
Did they really? Did the American people really elect you to let Elon Musk do what he's doing? Because it turns out the American people don't love it. A new poll out just this morning shows that just 23% of all Americans say they want Musk to have a lot of influence over government operations and spending. And boy, does he seem to have a lot of influence. And this dissatisfaction isn't just showing up in polls. It's also showing up in real life. We saw protests all across the country this week, and big ones here in Washington. Like this protest you can see on the screen from the country's largest federation of unions. When workers caught wind that Musk planned to show up at the Department of Labor on Wednesday, intending to shut it down, hundreds of people, you can see them there, gathered on the building steps, ready to meet him. Guess what? He never showed up. People are also lighting up the phone lines of congressional offices, many of them fed up with Elon Musk, with what he's doing. Of course they are. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski said the usual call volume coming into the Senate is about 40 calls a minute. But right now, it's 1,600 calls a minute. Independent Senator Angus King said he's been hearing from constituents constantly about Doge and Musk, and that his office can hardly pick up the phones fast enough. Democratic Senator Tina Smith put it like this: it's a deluge on Doge.
This is about corruption. This is about criminality. This is about intimidation. That is what Donald Trump and Elon Musk want to accomplish with the Department of Government Efficiency, going after and intimidating people that they want to leave the government and leave them alone while they break the law to serve themselves for the next 4 years. That is all that it is about. Elon Musk is not some super genius who is doing this out of the goodnesses of his heart. Like Donald Trump said earlier today, he's not actually focused on trimming the fat. And the most blatant example of that came today during the Super Bowl right before it happened. We saw a little clip that I'm going to check out and then explain. So those were Osprey military helicopters rehearsing a flyover over the stadium in New Orleans where the Super Bowl would be played. And of course, then they did proceed in the national anthem to do that flyover over the game. Now, we see flyovers all the time at football games, but they're usually in stadiums that don't have domes. The stadium in New Orleans, the Caesar Superdome, is quite famous for having a dome covering it, so that no one could actually see the flyover. Millions of dollars, maybe even more, were spent on a flyover of a game that the people inside did not see. How's that for saving us money? How is that for getting rid of the waste? Did we need a bunch of military helicopters multiple times to fly over AD Stadium for no one to see it? This is what I'm saying. These guys don't care about trimming the fat. Democrats have been for years now calling out the bloated military budget a budget that can never pass any comprehensive look at it, never pass an audit, but they don't seem to care. Elon doesn't care, because those dollars go to his companies as well, so he's never going to look at it. Just humiliating for a flyover to happen over a due stadium when these guys are talking about saving us money and cutting the fat and trimming the waste, getting rid of it all. They don't actually care. And that is the point that Senator Cory Booker drove home talking with Jen Psaki right here.
And get this, we are in a time of AI. People are saying, oh, it's just read-only. He can still scrape data, get pattern recognition, get predictive analytics, feed it into AI models, and what he can do is simply revolutionary by having access to the information. Its value on the open market, because other contractors would love to have this, is billions of dollars. There's no oversight, there's no checks, there's no transparency to what he's doing, and you hear crickets from Republicans. You hear silence. And so this is offensive to Americans. This is violative of values we hold sacrosanct, like our private personal information should not be for a very conflicted contractor. So this is one of these things that to me is astonishing. And we're going to continue to fight him in court because I think he is violating privacy, violating the law by having access to this kind of sensitive data. And it's something that we all as Americans should be shouting down and stopping.
No question about it. And thank you for outlining exactly how it will impact people, because this is not just something that's happening within the walls of Washington. This is going to impact millions of people across the country. You just mentioned the fight in the courts, and there has been certainly some successes in pushing back on Musk in the courts. Over the weekend, there has been a couple of actions, but he tweeted last night or retweeted a message last night suggesting he should defy court orders. The Democrats, you've been very vocal, but the Democrats are in the minority in the Senate. You mentioned the Republicans have been quiet like crickets. What happens if he defies it?
Well, then we really do have a constitutional crisis. It's where our separations of powers, our checks and balances, that he starts more and more, we're seeing this, wanting to be autocratic or dictatorial. we see this in other countries when a executive power starts to overreach their authority, and he is, by the way, doing things that are spelled out as Congress's duties. And then when the courts stop him, how we've settled things from the Reagan administration to the Obama administration, to defy court orders brings about a constitutional crisis. And so what Elon Musk is saying there is that we should not be a nation of three branches of government with checks and balances. We should be an authoritarian dictatorship, and that should scare everyone, because that's when democracies begin to unravel. We must check him. We must hold them up. We must stop them, and we must use every means necessary in a nonviolent way to do what is necessary to stop him from turning our democracy into what we're seeing in other governments like Russia's.
We've seen some significant efforts to push back over the course. There's been protests across the country, here in Washington, D.C. as well. We've seen congressional Democrats push back. We watched your effort to hold the Senate floor overnight this week in opposition of Trump's OMB director, Russ Vought, who did eventually get through. But I know you said this morning that you guys are going to do whatever it takes. You just kind of reiterated that to stop Donald Trump. For people watching right now, what does that mean specifically? What does that look like? What specific things can they look out for?
Yeah, well, let me just give the nod to the fact that elections matter. You know, if we had picked up one more Senate seat, for example, 20,000 votes in Pennsylvania, we could have stopped Hegseth from being, because remember, 3 Republicans went. So every congressional seat, every Senate seat, people don't think it at the time. That's the time we really need people leaning in, because the consequences for that we're seeing right now. We do not control the House, and we're in a minority in the Senate, and we don't control the White House. That gives them tremendous power, even within the bounds of how our democracy is supposed to work. But that does not mean we are powerless, that we don't have agency. Democrats are going to fight in 4 ways. One is in the courts. We've discussed that already. Over 42 cases have been filed. We've won over a dozen of them already, and we're going to continue to fight him in the courts. The next 2 ways are legislatively and using our oversight power. Senators do have power in the forms of our procedure and our oversight to just slow things down, to force people to take a look at it. Kash Patel's a great example. Just by postponing his floor vote over a week, we've seen more information coming out, like him receiving thousands and thousands of dollars from a Russian-implicated news agency that literally he took money from, that has done other documentaries that are pro-Putin and more. And so that's very important for us to be able to slow things down, get a deeper look, to be able to provide oversight. But the last thing that we have to do, the 4th bucket, that's not only something that we have an obligation to do, but every American does, is to shine a light, to elevate, to communicate, to talk about what's going. I am very happy this last week that Democratic senators have had millions of more engagement with their content online, that it's exposing what the Trump administration is doing. And why do I know this works? Well, the collective voice of outrage during his first administration stopped him from pulling down the Affordable Care Act and people's health care, people with pre-existing conditions and others. And I know it works this time because just 2 weeks ago, when Donald Trump froze federal spending to programs like ones that give funding for our police officers and our firefighters, or suicide prevention hotlines, or feeding programs for our elderly, there was such a public outrage and so much content was elevated online that the Trump administration stopped in their tracks, and then the law kicked in and we were able to get an injunction against him doing that. All of the buckets of our work in coordination to be a bulwark against what he's going to do. But I return to where I started. They won multiple elections and they have a lot more authority. But that does not mean we are powerless, that we don't have agency. And most importantly, all of us, especially us elected, but all of us have a responsibility in this time and this climate to speak up, to stand up, to be activists against these kind of illegal actions of the Trump administration.
This is all about intimidation. This is all about putting on a show. And this is all about distraction from what's real and what's fake. And that is what we have to call out. And it's what we're going to call out on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.